Hello, all. I am Radagast, and as always, I am at your service. So this is Mystic Brew, a bubbling cauldron, and I guess fake news is going to be what I'm going to be talking about a little bit. But I guess I'll kind of leaving off on my last cauldron one, the last Mystic Brew. I made mention about purple, that I saw Hillary and Bill wearing purple. And I said, let's keep a lookout on that. And so I'm just kind of going through different videos today, whether it's from Fox News, This News, whatever. And even with some of the people coming to visit Donald Trump at Trump Tower in Manhattan. And I'm seeing a fair amount of purple. But what's interesting is often when you see the people who you know kind of where their allegiance lies. You'll see red, you'll see a lot of the other things. But I looked at two Fox things where Charles Krauthammer was speaking, and he had some version of purple. Interestingly enough, Laura Ingraham, who I guess was maybe being considered as press secretary for Trump, kind of demurred about how she wouldn't accept it. She likes what she's doing. And it looked to me like she was wearing a purple type of dress. I've looked at a few other people who are on Fox News and who are, supposedly impartial reporters wearing purple ties. So I think I'm seeing a theme, and I think there's, again, there's some messaging. There's certain code, like my blue-green, my turquoise is messaging. But I'm kind of messaging the universe. But it's like I stand for a good immune system. And somebody might say, well, what's immune system have to do with things? Well, part of any good functioning immune system is the pathogens when you run into them. So in one way, I'm starting to see this purple as a marker of certain kinds of pathogens or mind parasites or fake news breeders. Or, again, pretending. Right now, a lot of things are in flux. This recent election has flustered a lot of people. The legacy media, that is things like CNN, ABC, MSNBC, on. And then all the online things like Salon, Slate, they're in a form of meltdown. Basically, it was the narrative. And the narrative is the storyline that people think that, is reality, basically. They created a narrative of a certain candidate winning, that would be Hillary. And when that narrative did not pan out, like in other words, the story was leading to this conclusion. The narrative was actually telling you how the story ends, and then the story didn't end that way. And so just as you're seeing kind of a little bit of a meltdown by some of the people who wanted Hillary to break through the glass ceiling, there's also a meltdown from the people who got it so wrong. And, the media who really created this monster that doesn't exist, this homophobic, misogynistic, racist, all these different terms that they branded a man who, when you examine his what he's kind of said over the years, and even his announced policies now, it's none of those tags really can stick. But there was a narrative created, so it's almost it's almost like that there's a villain, there was a narrative going, and there was a protagonist and an antagonist, there was a hero, there was a villain or heroine. And so anyway, so the news is really doubling down. So I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but there's a move now, and they're really leaning on the social media, things like Facebook, Twitter, I guess maybe Instagram, I don't know, but Facebook and Twitter are the two big ones. And that what they're trying to do is, because their news proved to be so poor, they're reporting so biased and poor, that they're now trying to brand all of the different sites who kind of fed that information and kind of pretty much were sure, especially based on the turnout for Donald Trump at his speeches, his rallies, and the thousands against hundreds, multiple thousands versus a few hundred. They were calling it, in other words, the alt media, the alternative media, and sometimes they call it alt-right. And to me, it's just a lot of talking heads, and I'm going to mention some of their names, that kind of carried this narrative, that gave 3 and 4 reports a day, that would clarify things that, that were reported as being said and then weren't said. I mean, I guess the New York Times says something about Donald Trump wants security clearance for his son-in-law, Jared. And Trump tweeted, "This is a completely made-up story. I'm not seeking clearance for any of my children," and he's not seeking clearance. It was a made-up story. So basically, right now, the people who want the freedom to make up stories without a counter narrative, and of course, it certainly doesn't help that Donald Trump himself likes to tweet and actually came in and said they made that up. And I'm quite sure he'll find that when people go to sources like, I don't know, maybe the Department of Homeland Security or some other security agency and ask, is Donald Trump seeking this? They'll have to say no. But I don't think they're going to do that investigation. It's so much easier for them to just throw out something, and if it captures enough minds, if enough people say it, it becomes the narrative. Did you know that Donald Trump is looking to get security clearance for his son-in-law Jared? Why? Oh, didn't you read the headline? And people are like, oh yeah, I read the headline. My thing would be, did you read Donald's tweet saying this isn't true? And he wouldn't be able to say it wasn't true if people would go and check on their sources, which I'm quite sure they didn't, because this wasn't source based. And he's kind of calling them out on it because he knows he didn't do it. He knows that if he did do it, he can't get people to cover up for him. He doesn't know who his friends are, and I don't get. That's not. He will get no traction by suddenly representing that he was going to be true and now not. All the other politicians do that. They tell you they're going to do this and then they don't. Obama said no mandate for his health care, and immediately, as soon as he was elected, said, oh, it will be a mandate. So to me, this is where we test. I mean, right now we're right in the beginning. This is where the baby steps are being taken about whether or not there's been a real shift, whether or not a person who was elected largely through social media, through being actually in touch with the people on the street, will continue to keep his ear there. And he has people like Steve Bannon, who worked at Breitbart, I think he worked at Breitbart, which is one of the main alternative right news things. And he kind of built this social media platform that kind of probably brought Trump to victory. So I don't see people who know where it's really happening, which is with us now. I really think that this is where we, the useless eaters, that is, we are considered by those at the upper echelons, this is where we start showing that they were wrong. They were wrong about who would win the election. And I think they're wrong, obviously, about us being useless. And I think this more and more of us are going to start stepping up and being of utility. And in their eyes, we'll probably be tools. That person's a tool. Yeah, that's right. I'm a tool. So anyway, I'm going to mention some names. And I'm playing with the idea. I mean, again, as you all know, I'm part of Global Mission of Peace. I do Mystic View once a week. And being part of Global Mission of Peace is quite time consuming. But at the same time, I'm also Radagast. And even though I belong, I'm in Global Mission of Peace, but I'm in there as Radagast. And with why I'm even on the planet is why I'm there. So, but I'm thinking that because there's going to be blockages on Twitter and Facebook, it looks like, and I'm not sure how Twitter will be able to sustain that kind of hit. It's a floundering company, and I don't know that suddenly being considered sleeping with the enemy, so to speak, or sleeping with the controlled media and basically the power control, the global controllers, the globalists, the predatory capitalists. Again, I'm not, this is the reason I said predatory capitalism is because we're not talking capitalism bad. No, but predatory capitalism is. So anyway, I'm thinking about making more mystic brews. And maybe even joining in like kind of reporting on things, and keeping the airwaves clear. I mean, because there is a dirty war. There's ordnance being here, and in a lot of ways, the way this war is kind of set up isn't like they throw ordnance, we throw ordnance. Basically, their ordnance are big piles of shit, and we have to come along with a broom and pick it up and sweep it away, and leave something nice in place of it. But some of the some of the people I've discovered in trying to hear what I considered reasoned statements, arguments, ideas being presented, because I'm not in the mood for I'm not in the mood for making others. Okay, this is about unity consciousness. So what I'm really focusing on is us becoming more coherent and more unified. And part of how we get into unity isn't all thinking the same thing, but it's all having a discussion about the things that we would like to have in common. So some of those names, I might have to put on my glasses just to make sure, because I scribbled really small and then can't see it. So some of the people that Alex Jones, man. I mean, Alex Jones is somebody who I really couldn't listen to for a long time. He still gets a little strident, but I kind of filter out the fact that he takes that brain force or whatever he takes that makes him so pumped. But part of it is his passion. He's a little bombastic, but I think again he is doing a media company, and I guess he just figures that in certain cases a little overkill might be good. It's almost like when you're on stage, you over accentuate because it's not the same as up close and personal. So I've started to filter him out a little bit and listen to what he's really saying. I don't share some of his geopolitical views, but I'm not really looking at his geopolitical views. I'm really looking at his views in the country that I currently reside in, and I'm pretty happy. As a matter of fact, I find his Owen Schroyer, who I call Alex's mini-me, and I don't mean that in a derogatory thing. I mean, we all have mentors, and a lot of times we'll pattern ourselves after our mentor. I do not begrudge Owen Schroyer for looking up to Alex Jones, and then maybe taking some of that on, or maybe it's because they both take that brain force, and that brain force seems to really be potent stuff. I might have to order some myself, and then hope I don't act like Alex Jones when I take it, or Owen Schroyer. Again, I'm not. Trust me, these are brothers that I love, and I think they're doing a great job. But I could do with that little bit of the over the top stuff, and then I kind of got her name. I think it's Margaret. Margaret is the one who's not Leanne, the redhead. I think it's Margaret Howell. That when the other day she added, when she was reading some type, and again they show you the page, they highlight it, and she put the word idiot in front of something and made a sentence inflammatory towards, let's call it, the freedom side, because that's really what I'd like to think that what this movement that elected Donald Trump was about, freedom, and that's what Brexit was about, freedom. To me, this is really the freedom and sovereign movement, and by sovereign I mean real, where you understand that a planet was created for you in this portion of our galaxy, in our solar system, and that through whatever device we were given the planet. Okay, we were given, whenever you read, you might read about kings and queens showing up later on in narrative, but when we got the planet, it was our planet. Okay, and so that's, to me, that's the natural thing. So we have a planet we all have to share together. And so for me, the freedom movement is to have the freedom to discuss how we share this really beautiful gift of a planet. Now, just, if anybody's ever seen some of my things, you might know Sophia, if that means anything. It also means wisdom. So, but that's kind of like, I'll leave it there, because this is not important. It's about freedom. So Alex Jones Then there's also Maya Yiannopoulos, who apparently has been going around to campuses. He's a young, flamboyant gay man. But the beautiful thing is how he's speaking about men's rights. This guy is a complete iconoclast. He certainly likes to go over the top. That's part of his style. And I think I mentioned it my last time. He's doing a tour on college campuses called Dangerous Faggot, and he is one dangerous faggot. Let me tell you about it. And why he's dangerous is because of what he's shattering. All the nonsense and utter bullshit that he's kind of blasting with really good, reasoned, heartfelt. I mean, you can tell that the guy's coming from his heart, and he's also coming from his mind. It's not either or. I mean, he's just really brilliant. So Milo Yiannopoulos, that's Yiannopoulos. I'm quite sure if you put dangerous faggot in a Google search engine, you'll find him. Another person is Steve Molyneux. Puts out some really good stuff. He's another one who's just into breaking down the nonsense and then inserting some good sense on top of it. There's this other young man, and he says he's a millennial, and he's of an interesting magical persuasion. He's Styx Hexenhammer. If you put, and Styx is STYX, Hexen HEXENHAMMER, Hexenhammer. And although he puts out some interesting things on the occult and other things, I mean, if you listen to everything he says, you'll find out who he is. But when he's making certain commentary on what's happening, is his part of demolishing the fake news. He presents himself, which to me is how I like anybody who has a real strong spiritual background, that when we're talking, we speak about what we need to speak about. It isn't about just our cosmology. Our cosmology should be in our words, in our actions, and how we conduct ourselves. We shouldn't have to go into some kind of theological discussion about things. That's kind of private. How your God connection works will be exemplified in your behavior and your conduct and how you treat others. Everything else is really kind of private. Jesus had a good thing about don't make a big scene of praying in temple. Go in the closet and conduct it in private. I think that's fairly brilliant from somebody who's said a lot of good things. Okay, and so that's I guess that would be it. I'm probably missing a few people there. There's another guy, Lionel. I'm not sure. He's a black-haired man with a kind of a shrill voice. He's quite a character, and I enjoy him a lot. And then also Roger Stone, who's been involved, he goes back into politics 30 years. But when he was on Alex Jones, I could clearly see this was a human being. I could care less about his politics. I want human beings. I can talk to human beings. Human beings, we can feel each other. We can be reasonable because we can feel each other. As long as we feel the other person is being reasonable and coming with decent arguments, we will open each other up and try and do some kind of Vulcan mind link and get each other. And he had as he sat there, he sat over a little hunched-shouldered, and he had hands, and he spoke, and he almost reminded me of one of the Muppets on Sesame Street. And again, this guy is brilliant. Again, when I make these little things, but to me, it was almost that Muppetness with what I felt was a human that just kind of let me say, this is a real human being here. And I really don't. I would care about his opinions when they come into policy, but even with some of the things he's saying, they make a lot of sense. When people come from a certain history, I'm glad that's why people say where they come from. You might understand why they make some of the decisions, but he's a good guy. And I guess the name of his website is Stone Cold Truth. That's Roger Stone. And he did hours and hours during the 60, 72-hour marathon that they did on InfoWars channel. And he was another one who said, I couldn't have done it without brain force. So those are basically the people, right now. Oh, and Thomas Sheridan. Thomas Sheridan is an Irishman. And he's if you want to find him on YouTube, Thomas Sheridan. He has a lot of good videos. He's actually spoken out quite a bit since the election, and he normally doesn't do, that's not normally his milieu, but this election has been such a global phenomenon. It has global implications, and you hear it coming from all the capitals, that it's kind of hard for us to ignore what has happened in America on November 8th. So Thomas Sheridan, but if I were to direct to anybody towards any of his stuff, he has I mean, when you click in their name, they'll take you to their YouTube home. Click on videos, because then you see how long ago they were put out. Listen to anything he has to say on psychopaths. Psychopaths are the problem that we humans deal with. Where we find them, where they are, the fact that a lot of them end up trying to be in positions of power becomes a problem, and so kind of like we're looking for fellow humans. Now, only 3% of the population is psychopathic, so most of the time we're looking at humans. But when we look in certain sectors, apparently he made a list of the professions that have the highest amount of psychopaths. Apparently, judges and lawyers were found to have the highest amount of psychopaths. That's what he said. The study said. I don't know. Again, I'm just saying what somebody else said. That's where observations kind of come in. But and if I have any lawyers and judges out there, and you're not, your chance of you listening to me, you're not that. So I just want to give a special shout out to these kind of people. I really am looking, to me, the internet has allowed us to do two things that might seem contradictory. One is sovereignty and sovereignty, and with also a national or cultural base. And then the other thing is what we're going to call kind of the global village, and they might seem contradictory. But I think again, when you're able to allow each other to speak, where we understand that there are certain ways that each little pocket of humanity conducts itself. And to me, they're kind of like organs. I mean, a heart is not like a liver, is not like a kidney, is not like a spleen. They're all kind of unique in themselves, but they belong to a bigger system, which is our body, and they don't compete with each other. They each have a uniqueness that is beautiful within the system they're in. And so I really see, when I'm seeing what the network is allowing with a kind of a global awareness, or a global village of sorts, we're kind of like one big global village, and we have neighborhoods. And our neighborhoods have a distinct flavor. I mean, it's like if you go into an ethnic neighborhood, there's a distinct flavor, and even the smells, if people are cooking ethnic food, will be different. But this is the richness, okay? This is something to celebrate. And through dialogue, and not trying to fix anybody or integrate let people, freedom to move, especially freedom of health. So this is what I'm seeing happening. I'm seeing a global village trying to form up, and that village is made of us humans who are tired of psychopaths being at the top and creating all kinds of situations that, because we humans are generally well-behaved, we're not psychopathic, that we kind of go along because we get into a kind of almost a somnambulance, a sleepwalking, and a spell gets woven over us, and that is, the spells are woven from multiple vectors. I won't name them. The media is the most glaring. The education system is another huge one right now, and so I really want to encourage more dialogue, and also I think that with this movement of trying to block places like InfoWars and other outlets, the one place that's really beautiful is YouTube. YouTube, I guess apparently YouTube is at the thing now where if you put up things that they're getting flack from, they won't allow you to do paid advertising. Ooh, they're cutting you off from the system. I don't see it as a bad thing. And I think more and more, like this man Sticks Hexenhammer, he has 69,000 subscribers, and he opened up a Patreon account. A minor drizzle in from that, with that many subscribers, can allow a person to pay their rent, feed themselves, maybe buy a few guitar picks, and stay on the case. If I go if I commit to something like almost a daily thing with a real objective in mind of keeping a news flow and also bringing my unique mystic insight, with things like the color code or just other, or there's, I take a holistic view of the world, but sometimes the holistic view doesn't allow me to, sometimes there'll be that presentation, and then there'll be presentations like today, which is, holistic in spirit, but maybe in delivery, not so much. And, I mean, I have a bunch of things, and I kind of wrote this up for another show the other day without that, because I'd gotten all crazed, but then, I never quite got to the camera. But then, I mean, yeah, the media, I mean, what we're looking at with the mainstream media is they're supporting power. That's really what they do. There's a power base, there's a power structure, there's a global control system, and they are part of it. And they've seen that, they saw that break down in this last election cycle, and they are freaked out. They are freaked out. And what we're seeing is a lot of thrashing. And we're seeing the signaling. Like I said, I think this whole purple wearing that we're seeing by different people are kind of signaling to the people who probably sign their paychecks. I may say this, but you see the color, just know that, hey, you need some double agents out here. So I'll say what won't get me busted, but look at the color of my tie or the color of my thing and know I'm loyal. Okay, so I mean, again, that might border on conspiracy, but again, what's a conspiracy? It's people who have a plan that the rest of us don't know about. It actually means to breathe together, to conspire. But basically, people have agreements that the rest of us are not in on, and I think there is an agreement to how to signal each other that where their allegiance lies, because this is all about loyalty and allegiance to these people. I mean, this is like any organized crime family. When you pledge your allegiance, if you step outside the line, ooh boy, there's some hell to pay. Not that I'm anti-loyal. I believe in loyalty, but again, us humans have to be loyal as long as we think somebody is working as a human being. That means that God can access them, and that they listen. Excuse me. And then if somebody, for some reason, starts hearing dark voices and starts chasing, and then you would have to say, I'm sorry, but you wouldn't go against them. You would just say, I'm out of here. All right. But of course, a lot of these people, they might not want to be loyal, but their paycheck, the paycheck that they're used to. I mean, obviously they could go work at Walmart and get a paycheck, but anybody who works at Walmart knows that isn't much of a paycheck and won't pay for much. Matter of fact, one of the things I was watching just now, and I'm going to play a little clip of this one guy, was just talking about how often when you go to get a job at Walmart, they tell you how to get like food stamps. I mean, they actually show you how the government can help you live on the and get by, because the wage they're paying you isn't. And in many ways, you see a certain amount of corporate parasitism in this, where they're not willing to pay you what you need to live in the system that they're supporting. So they parasitize off of our taxes through the government, where they go, but you can, as long as you have food stamps and maybe get a little assistance or some kind of public housing, well, then you can make a life of working here. And again, that's just parasitism. Rather than them running a viable business where they pay people a living wage, they'll let the government cover some of it. And of course, the government has no money of its own. Where does all government's monies come from? Well, at least at the federal level, it doesn't come from our taxes. It comes from the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve is the government's credit card. We need money for this thing. Fine, it's there. Don't forget to send the bill to the taxpayers, and that's what the IRS is there, is to collect on the bill of the credit card that Congress and the rest of the government critters have to spend on. They spend the credit card that they have, and they pass the bill to us. Okay, at the state level and the local level, I do believe the taxes might actually pay for some things, but at the federal level, they pay the interest, because that's all that can be paid now. You can think of paying the principal, forget about principal. But of course, the Fed isn't really worried whether you can pay principal because they didn't have any money to begin with. It's all hypothecated. I think it was in Bill Still in one of his things talked about how one of the second Federal Reserve, and if I have a detail here wrong or right, this general story works, where the Federal Reserve, this is the second, I guess the second central bank that Andrew Jackson got rid of. And when they, or else the one that came after him, I'm not sure which one, but they kind of approached Congress and they go, we could start a central bank and that'll solve all your money problems because we can provide all the money you need as long as we have some starting income. So we figure it's going to take us $8 billion to get a central bank funded. So there's 3 of us here, and there's you, the Secretary of the Treasury. So if you will, since we need $8 billion, it's $2 billion apiece. Each one of us will pay $2 billion, and you, the United States government, will pay us $2 billion. So what does the government do? It kicks in real cash, $200 billion of cash they pay to the Federal Reserve. What does the Federal Reserve does? It hypothecates that $2 million, and I think at those days it was like, let's say it was 10 to 1. So that $2 billion becomes $20 billion. So what do? Oh, well, they lend $2 billion to this person. They lend remember, there's 3 other people. So each one borrows $2 billion out of the now $20 billion created out of the $2 billion original cash. They give each other loans. So now they've satisfied, but here's how it works. So, so they put in $2 billion, they hypothecate $20 billion. So each one of them takes out $2 billion. So that brings us down to 14. So it brings us down to $14 billion, but they have $14 billion, but since each one of them is kicking in $2 billion, they get to add another $20 billion each. This is the madness of the system. And of course, so they have all of this money to lend out at interest based on us, the government, giving them $2 billion to start, and they didn't put in squat. All right? That's our Federal Reserve System. So obviously what you're seeing is all the taxes just go to pay the interest that they tack on. Currently it's almost zero. So they're not collecting any currently. But there's all this old interest. But again, it's interest based on principle that we put in the first place and that they didn't even have there. So, I mean, I hope you get just how screwed up the Federal Reserve System and why it has to go. But that's another battle. Right now, the battle is, or not the battle, the strategy is to come together, know what we want. I mean, there's a Mystic View will be coming out this Sunday on a GMO Speech TV channel called Do You Know What You Want? Because if we finally have somebody who's not a politician and has a big ego and likes to be liked, perhaps he'll listen to people. So if we're going to deliver messages, we would do well to actually have thought about what's important and what we really want. So when we communicate that, we're communicating the important stuff. Not like I'd like all buildings to be painted a nice pastel blue or something. You know what I mean? What do we want? What serves us? What is of utility to us? So that's kind of like part of what shows like this and other thing. And we're trying to create a dialogue. That's why the comment sections are open. And so anyway, so this is an interesting little piece. I think it runs about 4 minutes. It's part of a 16-minute piece. This is one thing I'm going to do occasionally is I'll be sharing, quick little clips. I don't, to save myself time, I don't edit them in. What I do is I have them queued up on YouTube. I'll do share screen and my Zoom, and then I also fix the video so that you hear the video well. And it takes probably a little bit longer than just putting it in there. But here we go.
Political scientist from Brown University. He's called Mark Blythe, right? And he's got some more stuff to say. This was real interesting. Let's listen. He has this to say about the Trump election.
Talk about what you think happened.
Sure. So I wasn't surprised at all. Many of you have been sat here in this room with me where I've spoken about global Trumpism and various things like this. The first time I came out publicly and said I thought that he would win was at a Watson event in May last year. I did an interview in Greece that went viral when I predicted both Brexit and Trump. And it's not because I have a clairvoyant crystal ball sitting under my bed, or I made a pact with Satan to see the future in a mirror. It's simply, it's pretty obvious if you think about it in a more global way. This is not a local event. Everything Professor Schiller just said is true about this election, but Brexit happened. There's a left-wing version of this that brought us Greece. There's the shrinkage of centre party votes across the entire OECD. There's the collapse of left-wing parties' votes in particular across Western Europe. Coming up next, Renzi is going to fail in Italy in the referendum that's coming up, which will cause a constitutional crisis in Italy. Shortly after that, we have the French election coming up. I would like to remind you of the following statistics. The lowest George Bush ever got, George Bush Jr. got as president in his approval rating was 29%. The president of France currently has an approval rating of 4%.
Imagine that.
There's someone lower than Congress in the world.
And what do you think's going to be coming after that? So after pretend lefty policies fail because of economic bankerism, what do you think comes after that? Fascism?
And the National Front have nearly 40% of the intended vote. So even with the design of the French constitution, which makes it very difficult and you have to have a second round, etc., the most popular political party by a factor of 2 in France is the National Front.
So right-wing fanatics are going to take over.
Okay, so that was that little piece. The president of France has a 4% approval rating. And now what the National Front that he's speaking about in France is Marine Le Pen. Marine Le Pen is basically France's Donald Trump in many ways. And what this man is seeing and why he said it was easy to call Brexit and it was easy to call Trump is he is aware, as this mystic is, that there's a mood on the planet. There is a mood, the humans are waking up, and they're waking up really quickly. And part of that has actually been the poor handling of the messaging of the mind control machine, basically. Kind of overstepped itself. It got too cocky. And it's engagement in identity politics. Basically ad hominem attacks, making it about people rather than about policy. More people are realizing, you know what, I can enjoy a good rank out and a couple of mama jokes or something like that thrown in. But when that is that's all the information you can get on somebody, people start realizing that it doesn't feel good. Human beings can only sustain so much attack. I mean, again, we all have a little pain, so maybe sometimes when we see somebody getting it, there's a little. I guess the German word is Schadenfreude, or a certain amount of vicarious enjoyment of seeing somebody. Oh yeah, you give it to them, but they overdid it. And there's a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt that I think is important to remember because it helps guide us. And again, it doesn't have to be heard in its absolute quality, but it should be heard as the wisdom it is. And this is from Eleanor Roosevelt. And she said, "Small minds discuss people. Average minds discuss events, and great minds discuss ideas." And so what we've seen kind of like in the mainstream media, or the soon to be legacy media, in my opinion, is lots of ad hominem or talking about people, small-mindedness. And, the average person is average. Let's talk about events, at least. Things that might affect us. People that we might not ever sit with won't affect us. Now, he's going to be, president. It could affect you. Great. Fine. Let's find out what he's really going to do and not a bunch of made-up crap. Not to mention what he's really going to do can't happen for 60 days. Got a little wait. And just another thing about all of these speakers I'm talking about, whether it's I don't even know what the guy's name is that sticks Hex and Hammer. but Steve Milano I know, and Alex Jones we all know. And these people are all saying the same thing. Donald Trump better do what he said he's going to do, or we go after him. And let me tell you, the people who made him, he knows the people who made him. He doesn't want them coming after him. I think this is huge. I think that the real process has begun, where the people will be heard, and the web has made this possible. And so much, so much commerce gets conducted on the web. Closing the web is like really not an option. So what their option is now to create this designation of kind of like this delivery I'm giving you, calling it fake news, but they're really going after the heavyweights like Alex Jones and Breitbart. People who have millions of people who listen to them every day. I mean, Alex Jones will put up a video. I'll see, and it'll even say on it, up 10 minutes. It has 10,000 views in 10 minutes. I don't know if I even have a video after almost 2 years that has 10,000 views. Same thing with Sticks Hexenhammer. I mean, he'll have had up for a few hours and he already has 20,000 views. I mean, these people are reaching people, and I think it's a great thing. I love it. I love it. I love it. Whether or not, again, I don't know if I have the temperament. I don't know if I have the delivery. I don't know if I have the time. But I know I am very much interested in being part of this new paradigm production. If you mind, as I've said in one of my Mystic Views, that's kind of like my own little trademark, new paradigm production. And it's just about, again, getting into the narrative and trying to open up, joining the conversation, and the conversation being about what are we going to do? How are we going to work this together? How do we start, creating a little bit, of kingdom of heaven, okay, just to use a term. The creation was handed off to us. When I went to the whole little thing, the world was created and we were put on it. When we were put on it, the act of creation was handed off to us, in my opinion. And then we've had a lot of middlemen and usurpers step in. And again, a lot of times they step in, with smiling faces. And sometimes not so smiling faces. But anyway, we now have the tools. The internet is the tool. There is an energy moving up from the earth, from the galactic center, blowing through the cosmic breeze that is creating a stirring. And that stirring kind of, to me, speaks to a spring coming. Interestingly enough, in the Lord of the Rings, they don't have 4 seasons, they have 5 seasons. The season between winter and spring is called the stirring. And I feel that that's kind of the season we are on the planet. Okay, I think that's going to be it. I'm trying to keep these to around a half an hour. I would help if I kind of looked at my clock before I go and then start talking and checking, because it would help me out. But I guess that'll be one of the disciplines I'll have to indulge in, or at least practice. And if I'm going to do this more regularly, like I said, this is still, it's something that's nudging me to do and be more involved, but I just don't know that my own psychic energy will allow me to do it, but we'll see. So thank you all. Thank you for joining me on Mystic Brew, looking into the cauldron of fake news. Okay, God bless you. Be well.